as well. Ms. Dean, good to see you all. Cool.
I think we should always have
I
a
do
team
really wish you.
meeting right before community call.
Yeah, right? It's like you to miss the part of the community
If
call.
you're here
Oh,
already.
no. Margulis, we'd love to have you back. Um, it'd be really good to. He'll be back. Okay, cool. Because I know that Margulis wanted to just show something off. So we'll have to get them back. Very cool. Very, very cool. Okay. So, should we get started? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Glad to do that. Okay. Happy New Year, everyone. Really appreciate you all being in here. Erwan, thanks for joining us on stage. It's good to have some PL representation. It has been an interesting year. I think that uh, hopefully we'll run into this next quarter uh, at a nice accelerated rate. Oh, ZKPM's up on stage. Are they? Wait, did I not realize ZKPM's PL?
I think that's Gar. Hi.
Oh,
Oh,
okay, cool. Right, right. I didn't want to dox them, but I'm glad to hear that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Cool. Okay. So how about this? Let's just go with this. This is kind of the loose approach that I wanted to take today's community call since it's like the first one coming back. Um, and then we can also have some people from the PL side speak on their side of what's moving forward here. Um, so for my part, I do want to just like express appreciation for everyone who's been involved with Penumbra this far and those of you that regularly come to these community calls. It's been, a fluctuating audience, and I think the beginning of the year can be a little bit slower. I envision these going to be a little bit bigger in the long term, but I am very excited to see this kind of attendance as well as like seeing people continuously interested in um, what's going on here with Penumbra. So I think the first thing I want to point to is like I think y'all probably saw some interesting things that were happening in the Discord over the last like month of the year. Specifically, it seemed like a void opened in the Discord and some stuff happened. And I think a lot of you are in this call specifically because some stuff happened, which was really great. A PvP game seemed to have that kind of came into existence, and everyone started playing against that PvP game. And we don't have we don't necessarily have some of the highest performers in here, like the ones who like seem to like have figured out how to play the meta game necessarily. But uh, it went quite well, and so this continues this theme that I'm seeing in the Penumbra community in a large way, which is playing beautiful games, playing games that people want to be a part of, and building community around this notion. So we see this thematically. I have some takeaways from that experience from this last one, which I feel positively about, but also learned a lot about. But if we look back over the history of everything that's happened with Penumbra in terms of its sort of community engagement, it has been a continuous sort of narrative of the community involved. Community involves itself in order to unlock things for everyone else. Um, and that was true with the airdrop. That was true with the summoning. Um, that and then coming into this last month, um, this game was a little bit more PvP. It was a little bit more, people trying to come in and they played with one another. But there was ultimately like a race to see who it is that could get what was in these like voids that showed up inside of the Discord. And people figured out the rules really quickly. It was very cool to see that broadly speaking, people played like a pretty balanced game, but it was quite aggressive. Um, and then people got even better at it. And then the last day, when all five voids were active, it was like an incredibly sweaty contest to see everyone trying to figure out like the best way to win. Um, so what I wanted to kind of say from that is like the lesson that I learned from that is that the kinds of games that a community wants to be a part of are games that everyone can kind of win from. As much as like the PvP game was fun, and there were people who came in and competed against one another, and there were like one winner, even though everyone was working on the problem. That doesn't really build in the direction of fun, right? It doesn't really build in the direction of like wanting to see people succeed in as a collective. And so, what I'm hoping to see in this community is like more of an orientation towards collective games and creating a beautiful game. And I think we'll probably see more of that as things move forward. And it's going to be a major mechanic within this community is like seeing people engage in the beautiful game of um, making it so that Penumbra as a protocol is um, is sort of like um, a product of everyone who's involved in it, and is also like enjoyable to be involved in it. There's like a strong uh, there's kind of a strong position here to be said that like a community is a good community are all of the core users of a protocol. In the ideal setting, like everyone who is able to involve themselves in what a beautiful game will look like will also be those that like want to actually utilize the protocol itself. This is not always the rule in crypto. There are actually, I think there's a lot of disaggregate. Like sometimes you have a community and then you have your user base. And I think that like having an overlap between the two is really important. So I envision that there's going to be a lot of stuff here in the future, and I actually know that there will be a lot more stuff in the future here that is going to be that's much more oriented toward seeing collective games result in better and bigger unlocks for everyone who's involved in the community on all levels. And in fact, we just learned some cool stuff today that we can't share with you that I think could happen in the near future, and we're very excited about that. But to be more concrete as well, Amber, I wanted to know if you wanted to speak a little bit about the kind of like what the customer, or not the customer, the user experience has been within the community and like what you've seen, because I know that you've also put a lot of work into like two programs in particular, but maybe I'll just make you speak on one of them if you're willing to, which is about the kind of um, dealing with ticketing and people's responses and how you've seen things kind of like improve from there if you're willing.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We have a couple of case studies
Mhm,
of folks, which is like exactly what we were hoping to happen, which is that people getting support helps people better understand Penumbra and as a result get
mhm,
excited about Penumbra because Penumbra is something we're really excited about. So a lot of that has been putting energy into our support flows, into the people who are providing support, getting them trained up, and getting them excited about Penumbra so that they can share the good
mhm.
word. Is there anything
Yeah.
else
And
about that
yeah,
specifically?
well, no, I mean, like specifically, I was curious about like you had shared with me like that there was like a higher number of tickets in earlier months, and then it's kind of gone down. So I'm curious if you wanted to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, we had about 120 tickets in the first month that we launched our ticketing system. That's gone down probably as a result of the holidays, and also because a lot of key issues were solved, which is very exciting.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, there's more tickets when there's more problems going on. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're just really feeling good about that direction.
Yeah, it's difficult to like correlate the cause of the decrease in tickets, but I like to think that it's because of like improvements in software. So I wanted to use that as a chance to kind of say like there's a good narrative thread here, which is that like feedback from the community, like when it's actually properly received, results in improvements. And I think, and I can't speak to like whether or not this is true, but we did put the information out there for it to be used by like the protocol development team, the actual team that's like building the software. But it seemed that there was like a good relationship between what it is that people were saying was up and what was fixed, and that resulted in us having the most recent chain upgrade that like upgraded a lot of like things that needed to be fixed within the protocol. And I think the continuous improvement of the Prax software itself and its overall improvement of user experience. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. Like I think this is something that's really great and will be a continuous dynamic is within this community is like if you are a user, you can raise your experience. Your experience will feed into an improvement of the software, provided that it's picked up by the protocol team. So Yeah, without putting you, like, directly on, in the hot seat to respond about that, Erwan, I'd be really curious if you wanted to talk about, like, what the experience has been like. There's, like, kind of 2 programs that, Radiant has been trying to run, right? Which is, like, the support program and then the beta program, and I'm curious how that's been, useful to you all.
I can speak on both. Tal has been doing a lot of really great
Mhm,
work with the beta, so I also, if you want to come on stage, you feel free to. But for the support part, it's from my point of view, it's kind of amazing that reading the support tickets, something that's kind of apparent is a lot of the users that have problems also understand like the flow of things and what to reach for, what information to provide, and
mhm,
that's been kind of amazing to see. Ultimately, the onus isn't on the users to do that, but I think it speaks to some quality um, somewhere that well, like things seems to make sense. Uh, it seems also, yeah, generally like the rate of issues is going down, which is pretty nice. Um, but obviously, always a long way to go to perfection. Um,
mhm.
so yeah,
That's really cool.
the beta
Um,
is, I think,
y
like extremely strategic.
yeah,
Like being able to like I think we found a few issues. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we found out that Prax syncs a lot faster if you keep the tab open rather than if you close it. And that's like, I don't know, this is a kind of like a emergent behavior that is
mhm,
hard to predict in advance. But having a cohort of users to actually like report like, hey, like by the way, it kind of sucks when I did this other thing, but usually it works, was I don't know. I thought about it a lot. um,
yeah,
Yeah,
that's really
so
cool.
yeah, to my eyes, the beta is very, very strategic. And I'm very, very grateful. I don't know if there are beta users in the chat, but big shout out. Um, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there are actually, but, I think, Ember, you'd know better than I.
Yeah, there's
I
a
think
Um,
Hypatia,
that's yeah,
probably
yeah,
butchering the name of this, obviously this Greek divinity, um, is in the beta program for sure. I really enjoyed
awesome.
the feedback.
That's awesome. Great. Yeah, it's speaking of that, maybe I know like well, maybe more broadly, Erwan, I'd be really curious. Well, first of all, now that I know that ZKPM is Gar, I would be really curious if Gar you wanted to speak to who you are. um, because we do have some cool announcements that we heard from the Penumbra lab side on the work that you're doing and um I'd love to introduce like Gar, meaning ZKPM, but as well congratulate Erwan on the work that you're doing as the current CTO. So
Yeah,
maybe you can
I'm
just
pretty psyched, and yeah, so Gar has joined us,
Mhm.
and well, I'll let Gar introduce himself, but it's, I think, like pretty awesome the perspective he
Oh yeah,
brings to the entire ecosystem. Going to be like very important for the next few months, I think. So
Yeah, thank you guys. So apologies, my camera's gonna stay off because I
it's
don't
okay.
think I can blur my background on Discord, and I really need to clean my office. So, um, so hi everyone, I'm Gar. I've just joined PL as a technical product lead. Super excited to be here. I came from O1 Labs, who were the incubator and are continue to be the primary contributor to the Mina protocol. While I was there, I was senior technical PM for ONJS, which is the framework that developers use to build Zk apps, primarily to deploy to the Mina mainnet. One of my favorite parts of that role was interacting with the community, getting to know our users, our developers, and everyone that contributed to Mina. And I hope to do exactly the same thing with Penumbra. So very excited to finally get in front of you all. I think if to think about just my personal philosophy for how I would like to be successful in this role. obviously a huge amount of work has gone into getting Penumbra to where it is today. And what I'd really love to do is now focus very keenly on the user and the developer experience, and bring my background and my experience to to making that a success, of which no doubt you'll all be a part of. So yeah, very excited to be here. Thank you all for the warm welcome, and yeah, looking forward to contributing to our continued success.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate that, and I'm very excited to see what. Yeah, so to repeat the question, if you could show off, I'd be curious if you could talk about and show off maybe some features of this new trading interface again. It's always good. It's been shown on previous calls, but like I think there's always rotating people, so maybe there's like some new things to show, and then um, give kind of a gauge on completion there and how you're feeling about its current state.
Yeah, let me just run this on. We're actually so we're setting up. Well, I don't know how relevant it is to this call, but we're setting up sort of staging for this. So
Hmm.
1 second.
Hmm. All good. In the meantime, uh, yeah. In the meantime, I do think that it's like based on the feedback that we've gotten from you all, it does seem like this is like it's like on the close horizon. It's pretty exciting to see just because I know it's been like, like the initial experience has been kind of poor and continuously improved on. So it's good to see something on the horizon as a result of realizing what is actually expected.
I can circle back to this, but it's gonna take five minutes.
Okay,
So
no worries.
okay.
Okay, while you're doing that, Margulis, do you want to show off something else that has been kind of asked for a lot in the community, like your sketch for it? Would you be interested in doing that?
Hello?
Yes. Hello.
Hi. Yes. So the mobile app is at a very early stage, but I can give a quick demo on like the state of the mobile app and how it's like internally structured. Um,
Well, there is one thing to preface here, right? The fact that there will be a mobile app at all is very
yes,
exciting. This is
very
something that
exciting.
the community has asked for a lot, is that like people are like, "Oh, is mobile coming?" And it's like the answer is yes. However, the question around when it's going to happen is like a ways out, but uh, that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, so
Let
please,
me let
yeah.
me share my screen. See if this works. Does that work?
Looks like yes, it looks like yes. Although we're looking at me, or and then everyone else who doesn't have their cameras on.
Okay, how's this?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so the mobile app is essentially two parts. There is a backend, a Rust backend, and a React Native Expo front end. Expo is a React Native framework. Um, uh, on the in the backend, we use a tool called UniFFI, and UniFFI is a multi-language bindgen developed by Mozilla. So it's similar to WASM bindgen or a C-based FFI like cbindgen, and its utility is essentially taking native Rust code and auto-generating Swift bindings or Swift wrappers from that Rust code. So we take Rust code in our core monorepo. We decorate the code with UniFFI directives, feed it into UniFFI, and it spits out Swift wrappers that we can uh, feed to the React Native app. On on the front end, we have a React Native Expo app, and that application. Oh, sorry, one sec. I think my is my connection cutting out?
Nope, we can hear you.
Cool. So on the front end side, we use a tool called the Expo Modules API, and essentially it's kind of like a bridge that lets developers write generic Swift code and expose that Swift code to the React Native JavaScript app. So this is essentially the compilation pipeline. We write Rust code, feed it into UniFFI, generate these Swift wrappers. That gets fed into this Expo Modules API that hooks into the React Native app, and then we compile the front end TypeScript React Native app and the Swift code into an iOS binary, which envelops the app. So the thing I've been working on is essentially um, exposing uh, full block scanning and proof generation methods to um, the React Native code f- uh, from Rust. So the React Native front end code essentially calls proof generation methods asynchronously from React Native uh, to Rust. Um, I can't really share my screen to show you what that looks like, just because um, I don't think I have it fully set up, but I can try running it to see if it works.
Sure. Go ahead and try it and see.
So I can't show you what the proof generation looks like because it's on a different branch, but essentially, um, I can show you what the base
Oh,
app
that's
looks
sick.
like
I
right
love
now.
the
Oh, cool.
So right now we have a deposit method. You can select the deposit method type, so you can do a shielded IBC deposit or a Noble USDC deposit, which is coming soon. The request button doesn't do anything right now. We have a transaction page where you can filter between the username, the memo, and the address itself. We stubbed the trading page, which is coming soon. The portfolio page has a list of dummy assets and dummy balances. The internal state management that we use is essentially is essentially being populated with dummy data right now. Um, this is the settings page, so you can choose between the default payment token. You can modify the RPC, enter a seed phrase. The advanced settings page right now is also stubbed. Um, so you can see this is like an early uh, build of the app itself. Right now,
Mhm.
um, we're building out wireframes, and I'd say maybe 10 to 15% of those wireframes are fully built out. But that's like a high level view of what this looks like. Um, on on a different branch um, of the mobile app repository, it supports proof generation and full block syncing. I can't show that now just because it'll take some time to fully compile. Um, but yeah, I get this is a high level view of what this looks like.
That's so cool.
Awesome.
Um, Henry asked in the chat, and I am curious myself, like how long does proof generation in this format uh,
Yeah,
look like?
so
Like how long does it take?
inside the iOS simulator, I was logging about 700 about sub-second proof generation in the simulator. But then I ran the same code on my iPhone SE2, um, and it was about 3 to 4 times slower, so about 2.5 to 3 seconds. Um,
Mm.
but my iPhone it's an old model of the SE2. I ran the same code on an iPhone 14 and 15, and I saw a sub 2 second proof generation. So
Wow.
proof generation now on mobile is approaching sub-second. We have room to do metal acceleration in the future, um, but I would say between 1.5 to 2 seconds on most phones for a sample swap.
That's amazing.
Fast.
Yeah, so it's definitely a huge improvement from the web code. Um, the web code initially was very slow. We made it faster, and most swaps take like 10 to 12 seconds on most devices. But uh, proof generation on mobile now is approaching sub-second proof generation.
Oh, that's very
That-
exciting.
That's
And
really
I think
exciting.
things should be like also a lot faster, right? Than on it should like basically be comparable to using like Bickley or whatever. Because we're unmoored from the
Yes.
Google Chrome's special program for latency.
Yeah, I know we've actually talked about that before, but I this is actually one question I had as well, is like, what do you see as the major build differences between building on mobile versus building on for desktop, which has been kind of like the first um, place that people have been able to interact with Penumbra?
Building
Um,
in what sense?
Like, I mean, what is the experience? Like, I know a lot of the like front-loaded work. I assume a lot of the front-loaded work of like being able to, um, do faster sync, running through like I know that you talked about like the difficulty of working with uh, Google Chrome um, has been like a kind of a hurdle, but like it seems like what you just said is that it's easier with the mobile app to run through it, and is that because of the front-loaded work that goes into it, or is it because of the or that's already gone into this, or is it because it's just in general easier?
Yeah, so looking back at this diagram, like most of the existing Rust code can be used. And what we've built
Mm,
here essentially acts like a wrapper that calls the core monorepo Rust code. Um, in the context of building for desktop for Chrome, we had to jump through a lot of hoops to make it work. The Chrome
mm,
runtime, building a Chrome extension uh, is very complicated because you have to do a lot of workarounds to make things work on mobile. Using UniFFI, things kind of just work out of the box because you can reuse a lot of the same Rust code, um,
mm,
and instead of having to build workarounds to make these things work. Uh,
mm,
this, in some sense, is a workaround, but once you have it set up, things just kind of work out of the box. So we're not writing a lot of new code to make the mobile app work. We use existing tooling to call all of the existing Rust code that we've written. Um, and all of the work really happens in the React Native front end app.
mm. Fascinating. Well, this is like super exciting. I know this is something that people have been asking for, and I actually kind of wonder if this is like one thing that I remember us seeing
I
throughout
think
the
Henry
Yeah, just I
hasn't
what?
wanted
raised
to add
for a
on
while, but
to
was
Oh, I
eager
didn't see your
to.
hand up. I'm so sorry. Go
yeah, I
ahead.
think
Talk, talk,
like
talk, talk, talk.
one thing I wanted to add on about your question of like what's the difference between web and mobile, right? So Tyler, a great answer about the kind of
Mm,
low-level implementation details where like a bunch of stuff actually just gets easier because you don't have to undo the work of the team at Google that is dedicated to making your life worse. Um, but from a kind of high level perspective, another interesting way to think about mobile versus desktop is as like open versus closed world. And so, in the context of the Prax browser extension, what we were really trying to do is build this sort of open world system, right? What we wanted to do is make it so that you could have a connect to wallet experience for a private chain. So in the same
mm,
way that you can go to all these different, say, like Ethereum front ends, and um, you can use all these different dApps, and they all do different things, or they focus on different, user segments, but they're all working on the same chain data. We wanted to build the tool to make that possible for a private chain. So you can go to Minifront. That's kind of aimed at being this, um, maximally decentralized, like static site, copy anywhere UI. You can go to void.vote, which is for governance. You can go to, very shortly, you'll be able to go to the Dex front end that Erwan is about to show. And so there's this kind of open world context where all of these different untrusted sites can connect to the wallet and request access to data. And so that actually is pretty tricky to build both technically and as a product because there's this kind of different like trust assumptions, right? Like how do I, not like give keys to these untrusted sites, but I give them access to my private data as they request it, so I need to, do the decrypt anyway. So on the other hand, a mobile device, is a lot smaller, and a mobile app is kind of this like bundle of functionality. Uh, and so it's sort of this closed world setting where um, there's a fixed kind of set of functionality that is available, and it's going to be really optimized for that. And so the trading interface on desktop is a sort of like advanced, um, pro trading interface with charts, and you can see all the positions, and you can do all the different types of liquidity. Um, and the mobile app, the wireframe, it's really focused around like how do you use Penumbra to build a like private Venmo. And so there's kind of two initial, like different initial focuses for those um, products. Where Prax on desktop is like anyone can make a front end that does anything they want and connects to it. And for mobile, it's like it's going to be here's a specific set of user flows, and let's optimize those and have the great performance.
That's so cool. That's so intriguing. The idea of private Venmo, I think, is like actually something that many people have tried. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what makes this slightly different? If there's anything that comes like immediately to mind.
Well,
And
it's
it's
actually,
very
yeah, that's
exciting,
the whole, this is part of the whole like kind of theory of Penumbra, right? Like,
right?
um, one of the big principles for the protocol design for Penumbra is that payments follow an economy. They don't precede it. And if you look at
Mm,
how people came to be using stablecoins, like prior to 2019, the amount of like stablecoin use was like, not real. It was only after DeFi happened that stablecoin adoption took off. because the economic activity of DeFi created a network of participants who were
Mhm.
um, interested in using stablecoins as a payment method. And once that network was seeded, then it could take off, and now you have people who are just like, oh yeah, I use the stablecoins for the stablecoins. But for Penumbra, unlike say, for instance, you could do private payments with Zcash, but the problem is, first of all, you have to pay in Zcash, and people actually want to transact with the assets that they already have. And second, you have to transact like on Zcash, and so you need to have you know users that are already in that payment network. But payments are kind of the hardest thing to bootstrap a payment graph of, right? Because you have to get people to use the system before they can start to use it. And what's unique about Penumbra is that the DEX gives something people to do in a kind of like single player mode. So prior to Penumbra takes over the world and everybody has a Penumbra wallet and so on, um, as a as a user, you can trade on Penumbra, and that's an activity that you can do without having to like first go off and find someone else to coordinate with. Whereas with payments, if you start and the only thing that you can do is payments, it's super, super hard to bootstrap that network because someone, enrolls, and then if everybody that they want to interact with isn't already there, then it's not as useful because that's all they can do. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the part of the product theory there.
So that's counterparty discovery built in as a result of an economy that exists within the system itself.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay, Erwan, I assume that your local
Really.
situation has compiled, so I'm excited
This
to
is
have
true.
you show what people can interact with. That is this like economy that precedes the peer-to-peer payment system.
Yeah. I can show a little bit of the progress and where things are going.
Hmm.
We're so just for context, for those who don't know, we're going to kind of like provide an interface or like build an interface anyway for the DEX. And the way this is the way this comes together is by um, having a view that is very much similar to what you would find on a centralized exchange, but it's decentralized and showcases what's special about how the DEX engine is built and about the market structure of Penumbra. And in particular, for you as a user, what does that mean for your experience? So, without going too much into the details, when you do a trade on Penumbra, instead of so suppose you do a trade on a single pair between and USDC, instead of your trade just executing against only the positions that are quoting both on one side and USDC on the other, your trade might be routed on different path that quote, for example, to ETH to USDC, um, and just takes advantage of all the actual liquidity in the graph rather than what's locally available in that specific pair. So in effect, for the user, instead of only like having like instead of having to be very savvy and have an algorithm that like will like optimize execution on like the different routes that are available and yada yada, you just have to send an intent that you want to do a market order for this pair, and the Penumbra DEX takes that intent and guarantees that you're going to get the best execution available against the entire graph. And this is what you can see here, like the one hops direct. So the sort of challenge we have to wrestle with when we build and design the interface is how do we surface those? How do we make sure the user understands that, oh, like actually you're gonna get like a really good execution, the best execution available, um, and hint at it without breaking too much the sort of like flows that users are used to.
Mhm.
So it's actually, well, like always like demo things, but there's a second pane that like gives you the route depth and like hints at like, oh, this is how much liquidity you have on the single pair, and this is like the synthetic liquidity that comes when you execute against the whole graph. This is something that is very visible as a user anyway, because what you will see is just like really good price impact and really good liquidity. So if you want to buy like a certain amount,
Mm.
almost mechanically, it's going to take advantage of the whole liquidity in the graph. And most DEX, uh, actually most marketplaces in general, suffer from a bootstrap problem where you need to have liquidity for the platform to be useful, and at the same time, for liquidity to come, you need to have deal flow and user flow, and this is like the incentive that market makers are going to follow. So how do you solve that problem? I think one way is just having like pretty good market structure and like clever like design, and this like lets you take one unit of liquidity and magnify it into something that's very useful for the user. So the to get back to the trading interface, what the team is currently working on right now is so just in the details, it's rendering prices. So here you'll have rendering trades and rendering prices and rendering, like giving a users a view of their portfolio. So on this tab here, you'll have a feed of market trades that just like occurred. So every single like position execution that occurred on the DEX will appear as like a flow of events that let the user presumably guide and inform like direction. The second thing the team is working on is running prices and running value of a single position. So in this tab, you have my position. So here I'm quoting, I'm quoting like, well, the prices are wrong actually. So whatever, but I'm quoting like a position with one USDC for the USDY pair, USDI, USDY, USDC pair. So USDY is yield bearing dollar, and USDC is just a regular stablecoin. And here you'll be able to look at the position and have a view of how much volume has been routed over it, how much fees it has accrued. So those values are stub values. I mean, actually, they're not stub values because this is a position I created for sort of like test purposes, but it gives you a view of how much volume, how much fees. So this is interesting for you as a trader, just to sense, okay, like which pairs have activity. It's interesting for a market maker to get a sense of what is the return on capital when you use the software, or like when you interact with like the instantiation of the software that's out there. And at the same time, you have like a timeline of the position to also sort of retrospectively look at its history, its lifetime, and see how much it executed, and when it was closed, when it was withdrawn, etc. There's a debug view that's less interesting from a user point of view,
Mhm.
but this is the current direction of things. You also have an explore page. Currently working on fixing the data, but the explore page lets you navigate and discover trading pairs and assets. So, of course, number one, shitmos, because you know important like
Very important to Penumbra.
of course. But there's more. There's third and shitmos and shitmos osmo and shitmos bag, which I'm actually really excited about because going on IBC range. Oops. I've noticed I've noticed a bunch of transfers that I found of, yeah, look, it's happening. So it's pretty funny. Like there's I think a bunch of new coins, and they're coming to Penumbra in droves, and they're loving it there. Because if you look at the like history, you'll see deposits for like quite large amounts of, like in aggregate, I think it was a significant amount of the total issued supply. So I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, I
That's
think initially, yeah, it was like most of the shipments. I think it was like 60% of the shipment supply was in Penumbra at one point.
so
I
like
like that.
Penumbra's home. That's good. But yeah, you have like a view of what trading pairs are
Mhm.
active, the number of trades, all the information that essentially you want to have to be able to move across pairs and decide what to do. So the flow goes decide what, like, look at the DEX, what's available on it, what can I do? Actually, like, turn those, of course, turn those turn that information into like actual like activity, and be able to inspect and look at my portfolio. So the portfolio is the other thing we're working on. You have a view basically. This is the idealized version. Um, that's like a ton of money actually. So that's definitely the idealized version. It's just a stub. Um, but essentially, yeah, you have a view of your assets, your portfolio allocation, how much is in most of it, how much is in the rest, and yeah. So that's the current shape of things. We're making, like, I think, rapid progress on it, and like the demo is pretty
You
clunky
should
right
check
now.
out the go inspect the position I posted in the chat.
Oh my gosh.
So this is there's not yet a like position leaderboard of like what the most executed positions or most by volume are or whatever in the inspect tab, but there should be. But this is one that I pulled out of the database, and at least at one point was the most executed against position ever. And it's really interesting because um, someone created this position with $100 in USDC liquidity, and since then it's earned about $140 in fees. Um, and the way that it does that is it's a stable swap between USDC and USDY, but because it's on that route, and because the DEX does routing between all the different liquidity. So this is kind of an example of what Erwan was mentioning about how there's this on-chain solver. Um, on the right side tab, you can see all of the different routes that people tried to trade, and um, how many trades of each route there were, that the DEX decided to route through this position in some way. So for example, like suppose someone's trying to trade from USDC to and there's also liquidity on to USDY, then this liquidity on USDY to USDC ends up being this like glue that can connect together uh, that different liquidity. And that means that there's this really interesting ability for the DEX to kind of synthesize liquidity from all these different sources. But there's also a way for LPs to earn fees by being the kind of critical hop on that payment graph. So there's a lot of really
Mm-hmm.
interesting stuff that we'll
So,
see kind of come in as the like LP meta on Penumbra.
so just to reiterate what you're saying, and just so that I understand it to be very clear, because of the architecture of Penumbra, which like we are all familiar with, the architecture of Penumbra makes it so that if you hold a specific liquidity position, but it is efficient for the market to use it across any given trade, you could very profitably be traded against as a part of any route between anyone's desired trades.
Yeah, so maybe another way to say that is as a liquidity provider, you don't necessarily have to be on a specific route in order to be providing liquidity to that route. Penumbra does not
Mm-hmm.
have pools. Penumbra only has trades and positions, and the Penumbra DEX is this big on-chain intent solver that reconciles everybody's trade intent with the available liquidity. And so you can be providing liquidity on one specific pair, and that can be used to execute trades on many other pairs. So this position, for instance, um, has been used, you know, 2,000 times to solve to USDC trades. And it does that by being one part of a multi-hop route.
It's so fascinating.
And as a user, right, if I'm swapping, I don't have to think about this. I just like, you know, send my intent to the chain, and the chain to really kind of optimize and liquidity.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's so cool.
It's been executed against 11,000 times.
That's crazy.
Just like, wow. It's like basically, you know, without saying more, but if you try to quote and provide liquidity on a marketplace, any marketplace, in the abstract I'm talking, like you want your inventory to, you know, basically, you know, be priced accurately, of course, but you want it to also like accrue a lot of volume. So like the two levers you have control over are pricing, sizing, and the metric you're trying to so like a little bit optimize for um, um, in like as a second order effect is how
Mhm.
much volume like is going to transit on it. And because like you try to, as part of like your strategy, you're going to try to control and eliminate all the other parameters and all the other like idiosyncratic things about the rest of the market, like, you know, other parameters you don't care about, and you're going to try to express your view in fact on volume. And this position is basically like the fantasy of any market maker. It's just like just like you capture all, like, you know, you have the competition, like you're like so clever or so lucky that you just like get all the volume to yourself.
Fascinating.
It's just like it's truly like a magnificent position, I think.
Well, yeah, and I think also like what's intriguing to me about it is that it reveals that there are other ways to build dexes that can be more efficient than using like the traditional model, and that people can like that liquidity can be used more efficiently in those systems on the basis of like how like a trading domain can access liquidity rather than just being like kind of like the dumb repositioning model. And I don't mean dumb as in like as in unintelligent, but rather dumb as in like it doesn't have like necessarily agency. But Penumbra seems to like, because of the intent solver architecture ish thing that's on the under the hood. There's kind of this ability for liquidity to be used dynamically across user intents,
Yeah, I think it's a good
which
way
is
to
super
put it
unique. Yeah.
dynamically. Like you don't have like to get that kind of hit rate on a
Hmm.
other exchange, I guess. Yeah, my hypothesis is that you would have to update a lot your
Yeah.
position to try to. Here it's just like, oh, like it's two stable coins, right?
Right.
Well, there's
Right.
like some other parameters of risk, etc., and like one is a yield bearing one, but fundamentally, like the question of pricing is solved for you, and are not very difficult to solve, and your hit rate is excellent here. You don't have to like, you know, the person or robot or agent that opened that position didn't have to update it or be online. It was
Because the market will just choose the market will just choose the
what's there.
utility of
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we've got about 2 minutes left here in this time, and unfortunately, I personally have to go to another call after this. But I really want to thank the Penumbra Labs team for showing up and demoing all of this. I think it's very exciting to see that like user feedback is turning into things being built, as well as like also just seeing what you all are coming up with, and people who come to these calls, you're all getting like a good preview on what's to come and what's useful. Um, and also like Henry, thanks again for like sharing some of your like kind of like philosophical thesis, which you share on a lot of calls, but it's always like very helpful to have as a sort of recentering. Um,
Yeah.
I'm very excited about
Well,
what's to
that's
come.
great.
Yeah. So
All right.
yeah.
See everyone around.
Well, I'll see everyone next week.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Right. Take care.